Welcome back to the All Things Mizzou podcast presented by Missouri Tigers on SI and KC Sports Network. My name is Killian Wright, as always, joined by Zach Knox-Doyle, and we are a little over a week through Mizzou's fall camp. And I know that is what you guys all want to hear about, but I'm going to make you wait just a second. We're going to hit some newsy items before we get into the juicy fall camp stuff. First of all, on the basketball side of things, Javon Porter, at the time of recording, was about 30 minutes ago, just committed to Loyola Marymount, the team where he played the season before he came to Mizzou. Porter was definitely better at that G6 level than he was with the Tigers. And you could see at Mizzou, he had some pretty competent games against those G6 teams. So it's not exactly a surprise to see him go back there. I guess, Zach, overall thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. It's obviously the season didn't turn out how he necessarily wanted to with that injury, everything like that. You can't predict things like that, but it's nice to see him go back to a place that he was really successful. And I like your point of he did have these better games against these non-conference opponents. We saw him do pretty well in some of those contests. So, and I believe at Loyola Marymount, he averaged he was definitely in the double digits for points per game. I want to say maybe like 13 or 14 points per game. Very high usage rate. So it'll be cool. He's had some more experience under his belt at a higher level. Now he's going to come back with that experience, hopefully have an even better season. So I'm definitely rooting for him there.
Yes. So Porter, as we all know, is a part of that 2022 high school class that Mark Mitchell and Sean Phillips and a bunch of other players around the nation are in. Sterling Webb as well on the football side. But Porter is a part of that 2022 class. And so he, I believe, entered the transfer portal back in the spring. And so that's why he is allowed to go to another team here. The latest on the eligibility crisis front, whatever you want to call it, is that Judge Charlotte Sweeney, who's the same judge that on, I believe it was July 31st, made the whole ruling like, hey, everyone's good to go. That led to the whole flood of like, whoa, who's coming back, who's not. The NCAA tried to appeal. And Sweeney denied their motion I'm going to quote this, their emergency motion for administrative stay and motion to stay preliminary injunction pending appeal. From my understanding, this means that the plaintiffs, the class of 2022, the Mitchells, all them, hold their eligibility temporarily. The NCAA is going to appeal again. They're going to keep trying to appeal until some sort of resolution-ish happens. I do believe that this doesn't open the transfer portal, though. And the only way guys can transfer is if they entered the portal in the spring, like Javon Porter, or if they were a part of a separate group filing for a preliminary injunction, like the Sean Phillips group in Ohio. That happened before Sweeney stepped in and ruled on July 31st, or maybe it was August 1st, one of those 2 days. So I believe the setup now is for guys like Mark Mitchell, who did not enter the portal in the spring. As it currently stands, they can't go other places. But if there's a willingness, I believe is one of the quotes I saw. If the team wants to make it happen and the player does as well, they can work to make it happen. I still don't know what that means in regards to, do you get a guy off the roster or what? Because the roster limits are still intact from my understanding. So that's interesting. Clearly Mitchell wants a return to college. But it still doesn't really seem like there's exactly a way at the moment. And obviously the situation, as every situation in college sports is extremely, extremely fluid. There are updates every day on the legalities and the court filings and the injunctions. So as of now, that's where we sit. Zach, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because with not being able to transfer, it's definitely it's an interesting ruling, but it's an interesting time. There's not a lot you can do about it. There's so many variables, but it'll be something to watch out for to see if Missouri would cut one of their players. It kind of feels, and see if other teams would do the same. It feels against what you want to do, because we're in August now. Like, these guys think they have a permanent roster spot, but also you have to weigh, okay, there's a star like Mark Mitchell. He could come back. So is it worth cutting someone and maybe messing up that balance a little bit? That's what coaching staffs are going to have to weigh. And that's a hard thing to weigh. And that's a hard thing for us to predict what could even happen. And we're not here to do that necessarily. We're just here to kind of weigh the factors like they're going to have to as well. It's going to be a difficult time for some teams. And I'm sure some teams will make decisions to cut some players, and we'll see how that works. That could completely mess up chemistry, but also it could be worth getting a guy that averaged 19 points per game the season before.
Yeah, I mean, it's very tricky, very complicated, very layered. It feels like every month, more and more elements of pro sports bleed into college sports. I mean, this feels like it feels like NBA late camp when some of the guys are getting cut, and all of a sudden DeMar DeRozan becomes available. Like, that's what it feels like. It's very weird. Except instead of one DeMar DeRozan, there's 100. So I don't really know. I still don't think we're very or particularly close to, at least on Missouri's front, things happening. Maybe I'm wrong, but it still feels like there are a lot of dominoes to fall before anything happens. So that's kind of my thoughts on the situation. It'll work itself out or not over the next month or so. But I mean, the season's going to start in November. I know that's 3 months away, but at a certain point, you got to get ready for the season. So we'll move on to kind of the more distant future of Mizzou basketball. And we'll talk about Scotty Atkinson, who's a 4-star point guard commit in Mizzou's 2027 class out of the St. Louis area. And he has really been shooting up boards the last few and rankings the last year, honestly, just kind of a steady rise throughout the whole thing. He was at the NBA Future Starts Now event and was at the Mamba Invitational. I believe he won game MVP. I know he started the game with an 11-0 run all by himself. I think he finished game high, 17 points, I believe. And obviously he won't be with the team next year. Although we did see a ton of reclasses around the rest of the SEC. Atkinson has not done so, and I don't imagine he will because there's no open roster spot. He will, assuming signs and sticks with Mizzou throughout the process, be with the team in the 27-28 roster. And it feels like it's really shaping up as like, wow, this could be another really good roster, already looking at a year ahead in advance. But I mean, if you've got Scotty Atkinson as the foundational piece, that looks pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, things are starting to change for Mizzou basketball. I think it obviously started with when you're getting Jason Crow, you're getting Tony Bryant, like this recruiting class this year. But not only do you have this great guard in Crow coming in, now the year after, you're going to have another one in Atkinson. And obviously Crow's expected to be a lottery pick, possibly a top 10 pick, maybe even higher, depending on how he does throughout the season. And Atkinson, like you said, is climbing up boards as well. So being able to have back-to-back NBA level talent at the guard position, once you start doing that, that's when you start establishing yourself as a team that consistently gets guys like this and consistently just has better teams throughout the future. So I think this is just huge for the future of Mizzou basketball when you're looking down the line, even 20 years from now. Maybe this is the start of something where Mizzou is starting to recruit lots of great players, because we saw it when they got Michael Porter Jr. Obviously, that didn't necessarily go the way they wanted it, but that kind of felt like the start of getting a lot of these higher level players, but it didn't necessarily progress year after year after year from that point. But now we could start seeing a thing where these recruiting classes are getting great year after year after year. And that's when you establish yourself as a really great basketball program. When you think about the Blue Bloods, when you think about Duke, Kentucky, guys like that, teams like that, those are the teams that consistently do this year after year. And Missouri has started that now. So it's really exciting to think about.
Yeah, and it's I would say the last year has been different because like on the recruiting front, like not only are they getting high level prospects, like they were able to land Mitchell, who is a relatively local guy, being on KCK side, and then being close friends with another guy on KCK who's already on Mizzou's roster, and Tamar Bates. But then also, and then Scotty, obviously St. Louis kid, local guy, but also branching out and getting these ridiculously high level recruits with no Missouri ties, and Crow from California, and then Tony Bryant from Florida. So that's the other thing, is what makes it really feel like it's like the start. But Scotty blossoming into a potential star is like, all right, it's going to continue. It's going to roll over another year. So big news. Obviously, that's a year, over a year away for Scotty's arrival to Mizzou, should he stay committed to the program. But it looks pretty promising for when it does happen. Last thing for some football news, we're going to throw it back over 60 years. Mizzou won a national championship from 1960. They didn't actually, but the Senate awarded it to them. The Tigers went 11-0 that year, I believe, but lost to Kansas in the regular season. But they actually won that game because Kansas played an ineligible player and had to forfeit. And so they went 11-0 and then beat Navy, who was number 4, in the Orange Bowl, 21-14. And Mizzou has been awarded this national championship, but they have not claimed it. Fun hypothetical, Zach, would you, if you were Mizzou currently, would you claim it?
Well, it's kind of tricky because I mean, obviously that whole mantra of something to prove, it kind of feels maybe that's why they haven't claimed it yet, because they want to still like strive for something that they can do in the current era. But yeah, I would. I mean, why not? I feel like it's cool to have a national championship under your belt. It's not going to hurt anything. It's from 1960, so no one is really going to get too riled up about it. Well, at least I don't think so. So I feel like, why not? It's just kind of a situation. It's fun. Take it. You can say you have one. So that's my thoughts on it. Why not?
I think what you said to open your statement is my exact reasoning for why I wouldn't.
Okay.
If I'm administration, I want to be the ones to win the first. I don't want to be the ones to be awarded the first that happened 60 plus years earlier. Now, I wouldn't fault anyone for being like, oh, why not claim it? But at the same time, like I think a little part of me would be like, oh, maybe I want to be the first. Maybe I want my team to go do it. That's kind of where I sit, I think. We'll see. I guess if they claim it, if we hear from them relatively soon. Drinkwitz has a presser on Saturday. We'll see if it gets mentioned there potentially. But I don't know. It's a weird situation. Another thing where it's just college sports are chaos and impossible to keep up with. But we try our best. And so with that will kind of wrap up our newsy items. We're going to head to break. And when we come back, I will have some of the position battles that I've been seeing in fall camp.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
My name is Terrell Jolly. A lot of people call me TJ, founder and CEO of Integrity Capital Management. So Integrity Capital Management originally started out as a property management firm, but we slowly transitioned to what is described as an incremental development firm that's focused on situational housing. I know most people say affordable, but we believe in creating housing for people that are actually in need and built to the end user. I believe everyone needs a home because when you have home, you have hope. The reality is that when you're building a business, one thing you don't think about is like what a true banking relationship means. And, I had the honor and privilege of meeting Debbie early on in my career when I was just trying to get going. And as a small business, it's really challenging at times because people don't understand the concept or not believe the longevity because you're just getting started. But Debbie was willing to take a chance on me, be patient with me. I almost look at it like a grassroots initiative. She's seen and believe what I'm about. Anybody that's really true about their business and want to get some things done, I would definitely trust hands down Emprise, because Deb's team, along with Aaron and Jackie and all the amazing people that work behind the scenes, even from the treasury side, I would say, hey, give him an opportunity because you won't be disappointed and you will actually be in hands that actually somebody care and that will see you from start to finish.
So fall camp started on last Monday, I believe, was the first practice. So a little over a week from when you guys are seeing this. And I have had boots on the ground for the Monday through Friday and then the most recent Monday practice as well that happened earlier this week. And throughout that, there's been some position battles that we've been able to see. The media has been invited to watch anywhere from 5 to 7 periods of the practice. And so we're only seeing about 30 to 40 minutes of it. We're not seeing any real 11 on 11 stuff. We're a sprinkle of offense versus defense drill, but it's no real 11 on 11. So what we are seeing as the media is just a fraction of what is actually going on at Mizzou's practice. So you can take what we see with a small grain of salt. But between viewing practice and then conversations I had with coaches at media day, we're able to kind of maybe see some of these positions kind of come to fruition in terms of who might be playing where. And one of the ones that I would want to bring up is the star position, because that seems like one that is a relative question mark. It was manned by Dalen Carnell the past few years, who obviously played that role really well. And it was very clearly just his. It's like, you think star, it's Dalen Carnell. And now he's gone. He's, I believe, with Pittsburgh in the NFL. So there's going to be a new face to take over for Carnell. And there's a couple options I think that you got to look at first. There's CJ Bass, who's a little bit of a sleeper and maybe more of a guy who's down the line. He's entering his sophomore season, was a 4-star prospect. He's got the build for it, the versatility. I think he's maybe a little more down the line, just considering his youth. There's also the two guys who I think probably have the best shot at getting that position, given both have taken reps, is Elijah Dotson, a transfer from Michigan, and Kensley Luador-Foston, a junior transfer from Auburn. Foston's entering his junior season and Dotson's entering his sophomore. Both played triple-digit snaps last year with their respective Power 4 teams, so they do have the experience. Foston played in the slot at Auburn. He also played a little bit of traditional safety. You saw Elijah Dotson play deep safety and corner at Michigan. Zach, just kind of your thoughts on what maybe each of those guys bring as potential candidates to the star position.
Well, it's interesting because you've spent a lot of time talking about that article you had, turning potential into production. And I think these are two guys that you can do that with, and two guys that regardless, I think we'll see time on the field this season, regardless of if one of them ends up starting and the other one doesn't. But I feel pretty strongly about both of these guys. And I mean, looking at Luador-Foston, has a little bit more experience, made 3 starts last year with Auburn, played in 11 games, racked up 20 tackles. And what I really like is that he does a little bit of everything. Not only did he have 20 tackles, he had 3 tackles for loss, he had a sack, an interception, and 2 pass breakups. And that's although he did start 3 games, I mean, he wasn't a full-time starter, so that isn't some limited snaps. He was still able to rack up all of that, which is exactly what you want in the star. You want someone to be versatile, someone that can be physical enough to play in the box against the run, but also tall enough to cover these tight ends, athletic enough to drop into zone coverage, just kind of someone that can do everything. He's proved himself as someone that can do that. But Dotson also has as well, just on a little bit of a smaller scale. He even spent some time at special teams last year just to show his versatility. Obviously, that's not like necessarily useful in star, but that's the kind of versatile athlete that he is. He had 11 tackles compared to 20, 1 pass breakup, 1 interception. He's a little bit taller, which I like, at 6'1" compared to Foston, who's 5'11". So if you want a little bit more size, he's got about 10 pounds on him as well. Dotson is probably the guy you're going to go to, but both of these guys are just great potential into production guys. And I think one of them will have a breakout season this year, if not both.
And I agree with what you touched on. I think Dotson is definitely, given his stature and his size, maybe a better option if you want to, if you plan on having them, whoever the star ends up being, a little bit more in the box. But if you would like maybe the bonus help and coverage and dropping back, then you maybe go Kinsley, Ludorf, Austin. I mean, he's really fast. Santana Banner highlighted his speed. He also said Ludorf Austin had a pick in practice the other day, so that's nice. Maybe some ball hawking ability. But I do think, based on conversations I've had with Jacob Yoro, the safeties coach, I do think the competition is going to bleed into the first few weeks of the season. He said that he expects that for the safeties, that it's a very versatile and fluid group. And that's the thing. We're talking about how the star position is required to do a lot of things on the field. Well, that's fine because a lot of Mizzou's defensive backs are good at a lot of things. You don't exactly have specialists in the safety room. It's a lot of guys who can do a little bit of everything. And I think you also need to keep in mind the possibility of maybe Santana Banner playing star. And this is another thing I talked to Yoro about that I will try and pull up the quote. But I asked him, because Santana Banner has so much returning experience compared to the rest of the room, if you kind of maybe build your room around that. And I think I phrased it like, are you shuffling puzzle pieces around Santana? And Yoro responded with like, yes, he's got tremendous versatility, big and physical. He cited the elite man coverage skills. And then he said, we can really move him around wherever we want and be able to find the best three players that we want to put on the field at a time. That speaks to me. I think that signals that maybe Banner could drop down into the star position. If you think that maybe Greco and Foston are your next two best safeties, but you prefer them deep, and Banner at the star gives you your best trio, maybe that's what happens. It's almost in a way like moving the offensive line around, where it's like you're trying to find your best five. You're not just finding your best one, you're finding your best five. And it reminds me a little bit of how last season Caden Green was kicked out from guard to tackle because that was the best five. And it worked really well. Caden Green's a potential first round pick in next year's NFL draft. He's getting a lot of preseason, all SEC, all American nods. It clearly worked. You could see a similar situation unfold with Banner where it's like, hey, we know this guy was really good in the safety. We think our best trio is with him in the star. So I think that's something to keep in mind, especially because there are so many versatile pieces. We touched on Dotson and Foston. There's Trajan Greco, who Yoro highlighted as the smartest DB in the nation. And so having that as a backbone and the deep safety is an interesting option. There's obviously CJ Bass, who maybe if he's ready. There's Jadon Blair, who's a fun kind of box safety standing at 6'5". There's Jaden McGregory, who Eli Drinkwitz and Santana Banner have praised for like his potential early readiness early on in the season. So I expect McGregory to be in that rotation. But I think it's interesting. I think this is a group where you're going to see not only a lot of shuffling of who's on the field in the first 3 weeks, but maybe even a lot of shuffling on where they're playing.
Yeah, it's a fun, versatile group that's really young as well. So it really hits on kind of the core of this defensive unit of some guys that definitely have shown that they have the skill set, and now it's their time to show that they can put it on the field on a Saturday night.
And kind of on that note of a group that I feel like could be puzzle piecing around one central figure, I think that could be the case for the edge room. I think if Darius Smith is maybe your son and you've got other edge rusher planets orbiting him, that could be something that we see throughout the season. I think Smith kind of far and away has the best prior production as it relates to last season, and is probably the most likely breakout candidate in my eyes for a guy that can take on and break out and have a Zion or a Damon Wilson-esque season statistically. So I think there's been a lot of guys who I've seen in camp rotate in and take reps at the edge spot. It's been Darius and then Langdon Kitchen, and then you've seen Jaden Jones filter in there. You've seen Dayton Hopkins filter in there. Recently, actually, a little injury update for you guys. Malik Bryant, the edge transfer from Miami, was wearing the green non-contact jersey for the first week of practice. On Monday, he was not, and he was participating in contact drills. And he even got a shout out from Drinkwitz for making a good play. So positive sign from Malik Bryant as well. And he's another guy that you got to watch in the edge room. But I think the edge room as a whole, and we talked about this, I know originally we talked about like, hey, is this maybe it's one of the battles to watch who's going to step up and who's going to take it. I think it could be a position that we just see a lot of guys filter in and out for that 4 or 5 guys maybe throughout the season. And it's more of a quantity. We're going to keep fresh legs. We got a lot of guys to do a lot of different things. Let's just rotate them out every few snaps.
Yeah, I think it is something where we could see a lot of filtering. I think it's important to remember Brian Early talked about how, I believe he said Darius Smith, Dayton Hopkins, and Langdon Kitchen could all have these breakout seasons this year.
Yes.
And I think that is a very significant thing to think about if you're thinking about guys that are going to get a lot of snaps. These are all returners. Obviously, Hopkins, I think he had around 50 or 60 snaps last season, but we saw it ramp up towards the end of the year. Mississippi State had 6 tackles against them. And also, he only played in 4 games because you were trying to preserve the red shirt. Obviously, you don't need to do that anymore, but doesn't matter. He's still got 4 more years ahead of him. So I think that is very significant to think about those 3 guys. Kitchen's a guy that had 171 snaps last year. Great build, 6'6", 264, 13 tackles. He's definitely stepped up. And then you talk about everything possibly revolving around Darius Smith. I think there are a lot of great pieces that are going to go in, but I expect Smith to be a guy that is going to get a lot of these snaps. He played in 13 games last year. He made 1 start, 16 tackles, 4 sacks, 5.5 TFLs, obviously bulked up like 25 pounds. So this is a guy that it really does seem like a breakout season is coming up for him, but there are so many pieces. Even when we started talking about this edge rusher room maybe 2 months ago, when we had said, hey, there's like 8 guys that we could see get snaps. There's still a lot of guys that are going to probably trickle in and see some significant time on the field. It's also it's a fun room. It's definitely less compact than the last room that we just talked about with the safeties, but it's still fun with a little bit more age, I would say. For the most part, you have Smith and Kitchen, who are pretty much veterans, and then Hopkins is a lot younger, but then guys like Jaden Jones. So it's got more of a mix between the age as well. But fun group for sure, and I expect a lot of guys to trickle through.
Yeah, I didn't get the chance to ask Early on like maybe how long he envisions the rotation taking. But if I had to guess, which this is a purely out of building guess, I would imagine we see a lot of rotation, at least through the first few weeks, through that Troy, maybe even Mississippi State contest. And then if guys start to separate themselves, then maybe you see a more traditional, okay, top 2, and then 2 more after that, and then we're done. Like it kind of was last year with Zion and Wilson as the 1 and 2, Smith and Kitchen as the 3 and 4, and then like Hopkins played a little bit. And then like the occasional Nate Johnson snap. It could flesh itself out more that way, or it could just be more balanced throughout the year. So that's something to keep an eye on, obviously. The edge room or the defensive line as a whole, it will probably just feature a lot more rotating than it did last year, including the interior, if I had to imagine. But we won't know until week 1. So another position battle that has seen a lot of guys going in multiple spots is the corner battle. Chris Graves seems like he will be a week 1 starter given the prior experience and given some camp stuff. But we've seen pretty much everybody take snaps after that. There's been Nick DeLoach, there's been Sione Laule, there's been Jaleel Florence, there's been Jackson Gates and Cam Keys even take some second team snaps or second unit snaps. There's a couple groups that roll through. Like I've seen all these guys play alongside Graves at one point, and then I've seen them play without Graves at one point. And so it's interesting to kind of figure these out. But I think the corner room is obviously one of the rooms where there wasn't a ton of production from the 2025 season. It's some guys who are working back into elevated roles, recovering from injury like Florence, or guys who just previously played higher roles and then were kind of demoted to smaller roles like Laule and DeLoach. And then some young guys who are looking for their first chance at a big role like Keys and like incoming freshman Jackson Gates. So there's a lot going on in the corner room shuffling, and that could be another one that potentially kind of works itself through the first few games. But Zach, what do you kind of see in a few? I'll let you start with whoever you want, but what do you see in a few of these corner candidates that make you, kind of make them pop out to you?
Well, Lale pops out to me, I think, the most. The 6'4" frame is really interesting to me. I've talked about it before. And also just being a guy that I think he really does embody the something to prove mantra. Started at San Mateo, worked his way up to Oregon, worked his way up to getting 116 snaps last season. And now is he going to be able to take that next step, really prove himself? And I think there's a good chance that he can. I mean, last season, he's a guy that his statistics have looked very good in limited snaps. So you can take it with a grain of salt, because obviously sometimes you're playing in these games where it's less significant minutes against maybe worse teams, but he had a pass coverage grade of like 76.7. He had 2 breakups last season, 7 tackles. So pretty impressive in the limited snaps that he had. That's a guy that really pops out to me. Jaleel Florence as well, just because he had been really good his sophomore season. He was very strong. His stats were also really good, in the 70s for most of his grades from PFF. And then obviously that injury kind of derailed his career at Oregon. And it's a comeback story is fun to watch. And I think Florence is a guy that could take that comeback story. And he's a guy that has proven himself. I think out of everyone minus Graves, Florence is the guy that has had the most success at one point in his career in this group. Obviously, Deloach did have some starting minutes as well in his sophomore season. But I think that Florence was even a little bit more successful when you look at the stats, you look at the amount of starts that he had. So both of those Oregon transfers are really interesting to me. I remember early on, I was thinking Deloach, and there's still a high chance. I mean, he knows the system very well. And he knows the system very well. He came back this year when he wasn't necessarily expected to, because I mean, his snaps decreased dramatically. So that does show being committed to the team. So those 3 for sure are guys that really stand out to me. And Keys and Gates are going to be great building blocks. Jackson Gates is incredibly speedy, that's just a fun guy to watch.
I mean, yeah, like Keys, like I remember earlier on in the offseason, before Florence and Lale got in town, I was thinking like, man, I know Keys is young, but there's something there. Like, it's worth keeping an eye on. Like if Keys, he was good in very limited snaps, but like I think it's not unreasonable. Like, you can't rule it out, a potential Keys rotational role. Because like you said, I do think him and Gates are going to be awesome in the future. But even now, I don't know, who knows? Maybe they could work their way onto the field. But yeah, Florence, I think is awesome because he's ridiculously fast. According to a couple of coaches and players, tell me he's one of the fastest guys on the team. So there's the option there. If you want the speed, maybe it's Florence. If you want the height, maybe it's Lale. Lale is going to be interesting as one of those like kind of modern built tall corners. And then Deloach, obviously, who knows the system. He's the longest tenured corner in the room and has been with Al Pogue for multiple years now. So there's a lot of interesting options to keep an eye on in the corner room. Last kind of major position, I would say, is that left guard spot, which we had discussed about probably a little over a month ago at this point, whether we thought maybe Tristan Wilson or Zach Owens could get it. And those guys do seem to be the 2 main candidates for the job. Wilson has been a spot starter on occasion for Mizzou and has kind of filled in as that maybe that 6-man lineup, sometimes the 7th guy. And then Owens has been like a starter at a few other places, but hasn't necessarily held down the jobs and has been a little up and down in such cases. And it seems like one of those 2 are probably going to be your starter at left guard. That's an interesting spot because at the same time, you got to remember the best 5 aspect of it. It's not just who is individually the better player, but who gives you the opportunity for your best 5 in the left guard spot. But overall, yes, Wilson and Owens seem to be the main 2 guys.
Yeah, And I think that's pretty strong. I mean, Owens is a guy that has been a starter at the SEC level before, and then Wilson is a guy that had 168 snaps last season, so at Missouri. So you've got a situation where you have someone that has been tenured longer with the Tigers, has had experience with the system. But then it is important that Owens is not only a transfer that has started, he's an SEC transfer that has started. So he has had experience against some of these same guys, some of these same teams, same systems. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. And then, like you said, it's the five that work the best together. And that's kind of stuff that we can't even necessarily know. That's chemistry stuff. That's how they're working together on the field together. And that's a lot of internal stuff that we can't necessarily see, but both of those guys definitely seem like they will be pretty strong candidates that bring very solid experience in their own different ways.
And, it wouldn't shock me if this position battle as well kept going through the first couple of weeks. Last year, we saw Wilson and Peagler battle for right guard through the first few weeks of the season. And obviously, Peagler ended up being pretty solidified. I would personally be very surprised if he's not starting again at right guard this year, but anything can happen. And so I think it's entirely possible that we see Wilson and Owens flip-flop through the first couple of weeks, maybe against, and completely hypothetical here, but maybe Pine Bluff, Wilson starts the first half and Owens starts the second or something like that. We know that's a plan they've used before with positions, and especially in those opening weeks against Pine Bluff, maybe not against Kansas, but then maybe against Troy again. You can kind of test the waters a little bit at some positions. So I think that is another one of the major kind of battles to keep an eye on. But overall, that's been what a lot of the first week of fall camp has been. It's going to keep going for the next couple of weeks. I believe the last day is a media session on August 24th, but I will continue to be at every practice and we'll keep posting my notebooks and observations on our website at Mizzou SI. You can also find it on our Twitter page on the Mizzou KCSN. But overall, fall camp is here. We're creeping up on the season opener on September 3rd. Sheryl Crow is going to sing the national anthem for that, for those of you guys who care.
Wait,
is this breaking news for you, Zach?
This is breaking news for me. I did not know this.
Yeah, it just happened, just announced about an hour ago, I believe.
Loves her. That is awesome. Let's go.
What'd you say?
I said my dad loves her.
Okay, well, let him know, and hopefully he. I guess he can tune in then.
Can tune in.
It's a big day.
I'll have a recording.
Yeah. So you'll have Sheryl Crow, Eli Drinkwitz, Santana Banner, Austin Simmons, a couple more people on September 3rd. But thank you guys for watching, and we will be back same time next week.